Hey there, welcome back. I've got the Minecraft world loading up, the ambient sounds are low, and we're settling into something that's equal parts relaxing and chaotic in all the right ways. Tonight's stories? They're the kind that make you pause mid-scroll and think, wait, why did he cheat on her? There's something oddly satisfying about watching people get exactly what they deserve, especially when the revenge is clever, calculated, and wrapped in poetic justice. And let's be honest, sometimes the best part is when the villain doesn't even realize they've already lost. These are the moments that quiet your thoughts, not because they're boring, but because they're done right. We've got betrayal, sabotage, secrets, and one story that involves a dog, a petty HOA president, and an eviction nobody saw coming. Let's start with that one, because when someone tries to take your dog, there's really only one response: take everything else. Let's get into it. So, I cheated. Yeah, I know how that sounds already. And trust me, the regret hit me way too late to matter. At the time, I thought I was slick. I thought I was the guy who could have it both ways: steady girlfriend who loved me deeply, and a little secret on the side who thought I was single. Spoiler alert, I was not in fact that guy. It started with boredom, or ego, or whatever toxic cocktail makes someone think cheating is a good idea. My girlfriend, Maddie, and I had been together almost 4 years. She was loyal, smart, funny in that quiet, savage way, and she actually believed in me, which made it worse, because while she was home planning our anniversary trip, I was sneaking around with someone I met through work. We'll call her Jules. Jules was loud, flirty, fun. She gave me attention I didn't realize I missed, and I told myself the biggest lie people in my position love to use: it doesn't mean anything. But cheating isn't about what it means, it's about what it destroys. And Maddie? She wasn't stupid. At first, I really believed I'd gotten away with it. She never accused me, never snooped through my phone, never even raised her voice. She was still warm, still herself. Still made me breakfast on Sundays and rubbed my shoulders when I came home complaining about work. I thought that meant she didn't know. What I didn't realize was that Maddie doesn't explode. She evolves. The first strange thing she did was follow Jules on Instagram. I noticed it one night while scrolling in bed. There was Jules posting another thirst trap, and I saw Maddie's name pop up in the likes. I remember thinking, that's weird, but I brushed it off. Maddie was always friendly. She was that girl who could make your friends feel like old pals. I just didn't expect her to turn it into a weapon. They started commenting on each other's posts. Subtle at first, compliments on outfits, mutual emojis, harmless stuff. And then Jules mentioned over drinks one night that Maddie's actually super sweet, kind of reminds me of you. That's when the dread should have started. But I was too dumb to see it. Behind the scenes, Maddie was piecing everything together. Every late text, every gaslighty excuse I gave, every work event that mysteriously never made it to my calendar. She didn't confront me. She just watched and gathered, and then she befriended Jules. I mean, really befriended her. I have no idea how she did it, but suddenly they were tagging each other in memes, meeting up for coffee, and one day Jules even asked me if I minded her hanging with Maddie more often, because she's honestly cool as hell. I told her no, of course. I smiled and pretended to be unbothered. Inside, I was spiraling. I started checking my phone constantly, wondering if they were comparing notes. Every time I walked into a room, I expected an ambush that never came. Just smiles, just silence, which made it so much worse. Then came the breaking point. I got called into HR. My stomach dropped before I even sat down. They had a folder. Inside, screenshots of everything: my texts, my emails, my shared calendar where I'd sneak in fake meetings to hide dinner dates. Apparently, I'd used my work laptop a few times to message Jules, like an idiot. And it turns out, Maddie didn't just send the screenshots. She also included a tip about some questionable expense reports I'd submitted for travel I didn't take, and photos of me with Jules at a restaurant, time-stamped, on a night I claimed to be out of state. They didn't even fire me on the spot. They just looked at me, like I was pathetic. I cleaned out my desk that day, walked to my car in total silence. That silence, louder than any screaming match. But that wasn't even the worst part. When I got home, my key didn't work. She'd changed the locks. I called her, furious, humiliated. She answered on the first ring, said, "Check your email," then hung up. In my inbox was a message titled "Foreclosure." It included a Google Drive link. Inside the folder were voice memos, recorded conversations I'd had with Jules, screenshots of every lie I told, a spreadsheet detailing every moment I'd contradicted myself. There was even a chart comparing my behavior the week before our anniversary to the week after. She treated it like an academic thesis, but with my shame as the data points, and at the bottom, a list of everyone she'd shared it with. My boss, my landlord, my mom. She wrote, "You hurt me. You lied to me. You disrespected me, but I won't stoop to screaming. I'll just let your own actions speak for you. If you've made it this far into the chaos, you're as addicted to Reddit drama as I am. Hit subscribe, because it only gets wilder from here." Anyway, it turns out the apartment was in her name. My stuff? In boxes on the curb. My family? Furious. My mum called me sobbing, saying she thought she raised me better. My dad didn't even say a word, just hung up. And my landlord sent a notice 2 days later that I was no longer authorized on the lease. I tried to reach out, tried to talk to Jules, only to find out she'd blocked me too. Maddie had sent her a carefully curated folder of our story too. Jules called me a narcissist and said she hoped I lost everything. So yeah, that bridge, gone. Burned, vaporized, and the cherry on top. A month later, I saw a picture on social media. Maddie, at a winery, smiling, with someone I recognized, my former boss. Apparently, they'd reconnected and were dating. She looked happy, genuinely happy, like someone who'd walked through fire and come out glowing on the other side. Meanwhile, I was sleeping on my cousin's couch, fielding passive-aggressive texts from my aunt about finding direction, and scrolling through job listings at 3 a.m., wondering how I'd ever explain any of this in an interview. All I could do was sit there and replay every smug moment I thought I'd gotten away with it. She never raised her voice, never made a scene. She just waited. Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It's organized, surgical, and absolutely devastating. Maddie didn't just teach me a lesson, she documented the whole syllabus. But if you thought that was ruthless, wait until you hear how one woman took down her entire neighborhood committee. I moved into my townhouse 3 years ago with my dog, Luna. She's a 5-year-old rescue pit bull, which apparently is enough to make some people lose their minds. She's sweet, well-trained, and friendlier than most of the actual humans in my neighborhood. I'd worked hard with a behaviorist after I adopted her, and she passed every temperament test our city requires. She doesn't bark, doesn't jump, doesn't even flinch when toddlers tug at her ears on walks. Basically, she's the ideal dog. At first, everything was fine. I paid my HOA dues, kept my lawn neat, waved politely to neighbors, and mindlessly recycled their poorly written newsletters about which shade of beige we were allowed to paint our fences. Then, about 6 months ago, she moved in. Her name was Cheryl, yes, really. And from day one, she made it her mission to turn our HOA into a petty dictatorship. She took over as president within 2 months. No one even remembered voting. Suddenly, new rules were flying in every week. Trash bins had to be pulled in within 30 minutes of pickup. Wind chimes were banned due to noise pollution. And God forbid your grass grew half an inch too high. But the real trouble started the day Cheryl saw Luna. We were walking back from the park and Cheryl, clipboard in hand, sunglasses the size of her face, stepped right into our path and said, "Is that a pit bull?" like I'd brought a live grenade into a daycare. I explained she was a rescue, fully licensed, emotional support certified, and that our HOA had no breed restrictions in the bylaws. Cheryl just narrowed her eyes and said, "Well, some of us don't feel safe." The next morning, I got my first fine, $75 for harboring an aggressive breed. No warning, no discussion, just a notice taped to my door like I was running a fight club in my living room. I emailed the HOA board to contest it. Crickets. I showed up at the next meeting, where Cheryl, seated in the center, like a queen in a folding chair throne, shut me down the second I opened my mouth. "This isn't a discussion. It's a safety issue," I tried reasoning with her. I offered to bring Luna to a board meeting to demonstrate her behavior. I even offered to provide Luna's full veterinary and temperament certification package. Cheryl refused. Then came the threats. She started citing vague clauses from the community agreement, none of which existed in the version I signed, and claimed Luna had intimidated a neighbor. When I asked who, she wouldn't say. Just told me multiple complaints had been filed. Next came the animal control visit. 2 officers knocked on my door and said someone had anonymously reported an unregistered aggressive animal living on the property. I invited them in. Luna walked over, tail wagging, and licked one of their hands. They laughed, said she was clearly no threat, and closed the case on the spot. But Cheryl wasn't done. I started getting daily violations. Dog waste left on lawn, even though I picked it up. Leash too long. Barking at night. One of them claimed Luna was off leash and chasing children, which again never happened. I even pulled up footage from my doorbell cam to prove it. But that wasn't even the worst part. Then came the breaking point. She posted a photo of Luna on the HOA bulletin board with the words, "Dangerous animal, ongoing concern," in all caps underneath. She didn't even blur out my house number. That was it. I'd been trying to play nice, to follow process, to stay calm. But I'm a lawyer, and Cheryl had just given me exactly what I needed. First, I pulled the HOA's bylaws and reread every word. There was nothing about breed restrictions, nothing about emotional support animals, and definitely nothing granting the president unilateral authority to target residents without a vote. Next, I started digging into Cheryl's own status as a homeowner. And surprise, she wasn't one. Turns out she was renting, illegally. Our HOA had a strict owner occupancy only clause for board members. Not only that, but the owner of the property she was in, her cousin, who hadn't filed the rental paperwork, hadn't paid the required leasing fees, and had apparently converted the basement into an illegal Airbnb unit. I gathered everything. Lease records, zoning violations, screenshots of her messages, photos of the illegally installed keypad lock on the side entrance. Then I got a copy of the HOA's rules enforcement policy, and her name wasn't on half the forms she claimed to file. I called an emergency board meeting. Cheryl tried to shut it down, but the moment I presented documentation proving she wasn't even eligible to be on the board, the tide turned. Fast. The board was furious. Not just about the illegal occupancy, but about the potential liability she'd exposed them to with false fines and forged paperwork. And then I hit them with the cherry on top, her targeting of a protected emotional support animal, documented in writing, with zero due process. They voted to remove her from the board unanimously right then and there. 3 days later, her eviction notice was posted. Not by me, by her cousin who didn't want to get fined or dragged into a lawsuit. She tried to fight it, sent out angry emails, claimed she was being harassed. But the board had seen enough. And the real kicker, the person they nominated to take her place, was me. I didn't accept it, by the way. I have no interest in being HOA president. I just wanted to walk my dog in peace. But I did offer to host a community dog social in the park that month. Luna wore a little bandana that said, "Board Certified Good Girl." Everyone laughed, even the people who used to avoid us. Wow, this woman took suburban power tripping to a whole new level. All that scheming just to get evicted by her own cousin. The audacity is almost impressive, almost. Sometimes the best revenge isn't aggressive, it's just documented. That story had bite, but the next one, it's pure surveillance gone wrong. It started small, just little things that felt off. I'd come home and noticed that the trash bin had been shifted a few feet from where I left it. Packages delivered to my porch would be slightly turned or tilted, like someone had picked them up and set them back down too carefully. I convinced myself it was wind, or the delivery guys, or maybe just me being forgetful. You know how your brain fills in the blanks when it wants everything to be normal? But then I caught movement. I was sitting on the couch late one night, lights off, just the soft blue glow of the TV flickering in the corner. That's when I saw it. A flicker of reflection, something glinting across the backyard fence. It was brief, like the lens of a camera catching light. I stood up, moved to the window, and just stood there in the dark. Nothing. No movement, no sound. Still, it didn't sit right. So the next morning I started looking more closely. That's when I found it. My neighbor, let's call him Brad because of course his name is Brad, had mounted a tiny black camera in one of the trees on his property, angled just enough to peek through the back corner of my windows. It was one of those off-brand motion-triggered wildlife cams, but instead of deer, it was recording me. In my living room, my kitchen, my bedroom, if the blinds weren't drawn just right. I stood there staring at the lens, and for a minute I didn't move. My first instinct was rage, My second was to knock on his door and cause a scene, but instead I smiled. If Brad wanted to watch me, I was going to give him something to watch. I started planning that night. First, I repositioned all the furniture that was visible from the camera's angle. I made sure to keep the lights on at key times. I even moved a mirror so it would reflect more activity toward the corner of the room. Then I reached out to a few friends and asked for the most unhinged, dramatic favors I could think of. On Monday, I staged a fake romantic argument. I had a friend come over dressed in business casual, briefcase, glasses, the whole secret affair vibe. We stood in front of the window arguing, complete with exaggerated gestures, fake tears, and a dramatic slap that echoed through the room. Then he stormed out, got into his car, and drove off with tires screeching. I even followed him out and yelled, "And don't ever come back!" On Tuesday, I upped the chaos. I borrowed a clown costume. Yes, a clown costume. I spent the evening walking back and forth in the living room juggling knives. Not sharp ones, but it looked good from a distance. At one point, I stared directly into the camera for a solid 30 seconds, still in full clown makeup, holding a cake with the words, "I know," written in red frosting. But that wasn't even the worst part. Then came the breaking point. On Thursday night, I staged a fake police visit. I had two friends dress in thrift store police uniforms, nothing official, just enough to look real from a distance, and escort me out of my house in handcuffs. I yelled things like, "You'll never find the bodies," and "The parrots told me to do it." They walked me down the sidewalk in full view of the camera. We even staged flashing lights using a cheap projector and sound effects from a Bluetooth speaker hidden in the bushes. Brad took the bait. Hard. I caught him the next day frantically pulling the camera down from the tree. Not just turning it off, ripping it out. Like he thought destroying the evidence would save him from whatever fictional drama he now believed he was part of. But, see, what Brad didn't know is that I had my own camera. I'd set it up 2 days after I found his, tucked into my windowsill, angled just right to catch his tree, and recording the moment he installed and removed his little surveillance setup. I had everything. Time-stamped, geo-tagged, high-definition footage of a man spying on his neighbor, like it was a Netflix docuseries. I didn't go to him, I went above him. First stop, the HOA. Turns out spying on your neighbor with unauthorized surveillance equipment is very against the community rules, especially when that neighbor has evidence. They called an emergency meeting. Brad showed up looking nervous and confused, probably thinking it was about his untrimmed hedges. I played the footage. The silence in that room was delicious. Second stop, his wife. I sent her a Dropbox folder titled, "You Should See This." She opened it, watched it, and moved out that weekend. I saw her loading her car in the rain. No drama, no shouting. Just a woman who realized her husband had a camera obsession and possibly a second life. But the final stop? His job. See, Brad worked in IT for a local private school. A job where trust, privacy, and discretion were kind of the whole point. I didn't even have to do much there. Just a polite email to the school board with a redacted summary of his extracurricular surveillance hobby and a note that I'd be willing to cooperate with any internal investigation. He was let go a week later. And yes, he's on a registry now. Not that registry, but one of those local neighborhood watch violation lists that circulated among HOAs and community managers. He'll have to declare the camera incident every time he applies to rent or buy property in the region. Brad moved out 3 months later. The new neighbor, super chill. Likes grilling. Has a corgi named Spud. No cameras pointed at my windows. Wow. This guy really tried to live out his own low-budget spy thriller and ended up casting himself as the villain. Honestly, poetic justice doesn't get more theatrical than being outplayed by a guy in a clown suit and fake cops. Sometimes all you need is patience, creativity, and just the right amount of unhinged energy to make someone completely unravel. Speaking of betrayal, what would you do if your best friend stole your idea? I've never been the type to gatekeep a good idea, especially not with my best friend. We'd been tight since college, built study playlists together, helped each other through awful jobs, even co-signed on a lease once. She was my person. So when I started brainstorming this app, a super simple, actually useful platform that would connect freelancers to vetted small business clients, I shared it with her. Mock-ups, feature lists, even a name. It wasn't some vague concept. I had a pitch deck, I had workflows, I had a plan. Her reaction? She lit up, said it was genius, said we should totally build it together. We set a meeting to talk next steps. She cancelled last minute, then another. Then stopped replying to my messages altogether. I figured life got busy until I saw the ad. There it was, an Instagram reel for an app called QuickBridge. The interface looked painfully familiar. I tapped the preview video and my stomach dropped. The colors were different, the font was slightly sleeker, but the functionality, it was mine, word for word. The tagline was even the same, real connections. Better business. I sat there on my couch, phone in hand, thinking. She didn't even try to hide it. The betrayal hit in waves, first shock, then sadness, then the kind of rage that simmers into clarity. She'd ghosted me, stolen the idea, and pushed it live before I could finish my build. But as I downloaded the app and started poking around, something became clear. It was bad. Like, painfully bad. The sign-up process was clunky. The location filters didn't work. The interface glitched anytime you switched from mobile to tablet. And the legal page? Missing. Entirely. No terms of service, no privacy policy, no cookie disclosure. Just a footer that said, "Coming soon," like that would hold up in court. That's when I realized she'd built it fast, but she hadn't built it well. So I stopped feeling sorry for myself and got to work. I'd already built the back end of my version. It was cleaner, smoother, and, most importantly, legally airtight. I took a week off my freelance contracts, finished the last few features, and uploaded it to the App Store under a new name, Loop Nest. But I didn't publish it under my own name. I created a fake founder profile, not to be shady, but because I wanted the launch to stand on its own. No bias, no drama, just good UX. In the meantime, I started making quiet moves. I found every legal misstep in QuickBridge's public code and documentation. No GDPR compliance, no age gate, no cookie tracking disclosures. And don't even get me started on data encryption, because they had none. I compiled everything, took screenshots, annotated user flows, documented security flaws, even submitted a tip to a watchdog site that tracks App Store violations. Then I waited, but that wasn't even the worst part. Then came the breaking point. 2 weeks after LoopNest went live, QuickBridge was pulled from the App Store, completely gone. No warning, no graceful pause for updates, just a 404 where the page used to be. Turns out that privacy policy placeholder? Yeah, that violated multiple developer agreements. And someone, no idea who of course, had submitted a very thorough report to Apple and Google about their missing documentation and data tracking practices. She tried to fight it, of course. Ranted on LinkedIn about competitor sabotage and industry bullying, but the comments were brutal. Most people were just asking why her app never actually worked. One guy even said, "Maybe fix your bugs before writing think pieces." Meanwhile, LoopNest was quietly picking up traction. Freelancers started tweeting about how finally someone made a platform that actually works. A small YouTuber even did a walkthrough of the interface and called it shockingly smooth. We hit 10,000 users by month 2. And she blocked me on everything. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, even LinkedIn. Which honestly was kind of a gift. I haven't heard from her since, but I still see remnants of her old branding sometimes. Little ghost logos on cached search results. Every time I see one, I smile. Because here's the thing, she didn't just steal an idea. She underestimated the one person who actually knew how to build it right. And in the end, she rushed out a half-baked product, thinking speed would win over integrity. Wow, imagine stealing someone's work and still failing at it. It's almost poetic. She had a head start and still managed to trip over her own ego. Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It's silent success. It's watching someone crash the car they stole from you while you're building a better one. Let's leave betrayal and head into housing horror, shall we? I should have known something was off the first time my shower sputtered out mid-rinse and started coughing up brown water. At first I told myself it was just an old building. Rent was cheap, too cheap for the area honestly, and I figured I could put up with a few creaks and quirks in exchange for saving a few $100 a month. But you can only tell yourself it builds character for so long before you realize you're just living in a health hazard with a lease. It wasn't just the water. The ceiling in the kitchen had this weird discoloration that slowly spread into a soft, fuzzy blotch. Mold. I knew it. I could smell it. And then the rats showed up. The first one darted across my floor at 2 a.m., like it owned the place. I nearly tripped over my own feet trying to chase it out. The next night, there were two. They started nesting in the wall behind the stove. I could hear them scratching at night like tiny burglars digging through drywall. So I called my landlord. His response? Try peppermint oil. I wish I was kidding. I told him about the water, the mold, the rats. He said, and I quote, "It's an old building, don't expect perfection." Then he blamed me for creating moisture problems, as if I was out here misting the drywall for fun. That's when I started documenting everything. I took photos of the mold every day for 2 weeks. I kept time-stamped videos of water leaks, broken pipes, and even caught a rat skittering behind the oven like it was late for work. I bought an air quality test kit online and ran it 3 different times in 3 different rooms. All came back with mold spore levels way above safe thresholds. I emailed it all to him. No reply. So I sent it again. Still nothing. Then came the second escalation. The wall behind my fridge caved in during a rainstorm. No warning, no dramatic crash. Just a slow, wet collapse. Drywall turned to mush, and I found a whole rat nest tucked inside like a little furry Airbnb. I was done. I filed a formal complaint with the city's Housing and Code Enforcement Department. They were surprisingly fast. A week later, I got a call from an inspector named Teresa, who said she'd be by the next day. I gave her the whole tour: mold, rats, pipes, collapsed wall, even the mystery stains under the bathroom sink. She didn't say much, just took notes. A lot of notes. But then came the breaking point. She asked to check the basement. I had never even seen the basement. The door was padlocked. Teresa called the fire department to help access it, citing public safety. Once they got in, well, turns out the basement had flooded weeks ago. Standing water, exposed wires, black mold colonies blooming like it was their birthday. The smell was unreal, like mildew, rot, and despair all sharing one musty breath. Teresa stepped outside, made a single phone call, and by the end of the day, the city had posted a bright orange sign on the front of the building. Uninhabitable. Do not enter. I wasn't the only tenant either. 3 other units. All of us got hotel vouchers for the week and assistance finding temporary housing. Turns out the landlord had ignored complaints from everyone, just silenced them one by one, hoping people would move out instead of report him. But I documented everything. The city opened a full investigation, and the building? Condemned. My landlord didn't just get fined, he lost his rental license entirely. Can't manage or own rental property in the state anymore. Wow. Imagine being so lazy and greedy that you turn an entire building into a biohazard and still act like it's your tenant's fault. The rats had a better work ethic than this guy. And here's the cherry on top. Teresa, the inspector, she called me personally a few weeks later to follow up. Said her sister had a renovated unit opening up in the same neighborhood. Clean, safe, and fully up to code. Asked if I wanted first dibs before they listed it. I moved in that weekend. No rats. No mold. No landlord with a peppermint oil obsession. Sometimes being the reasonable person in an unreasonable situation makes you look like the problem. But sometimes you just have to out-document your villain. Sometimes revenge is legal, but sometimes it's recorded. I always thought my job was safe, until it wasn't. I worked in a mid-sized marketing firm, the kind where half your job is making sure the client's happy, and the other half is just surviving the office politics. I didn't mind it. I liked the work, loved my team, most of them anyway, and had been promoted twice in 3 years. I wasn't flashy about it, just consistent. I hit deadlines, handled drama with a smile, and never missed a client call, which apparently was enough to make me a target. Her name was Trina, and if you've ever worked in an office, you know a Trina. At first I didn't notice it, a missed calendar invite here. A weird look there, but then things started stacking up. One of my proposals went missing from a shared folder and magically reappeared with her name on it. A client told me they heard I'd dropped the ball on a social campaign I never even touched. And one morning my manager pulled me into her office with a concerned face and said, "We've heard some things that make us question your focus lately." That's when I knew. I'd been getting Trinaed. She wanted my position, senior brand strategist, and decided the best way to climb was to kneecap me on the way up. I wasn't new to petty office drama, but this was something else. She wasn't just petty, She was strategic. She'd smile to my face, ask how my weekend was, and then casually imply to HR that I was struggling with time management. So I did the only thing I could. I started recording. Now, to be clear, I checked my state laws first. We're a one-party consent state, so as long as I was part of the conversation, I was legally in the clear. I bought a discreet little USB recorder that looked like a regular flash drive and plugged it into the back of my monitor at work. Every conversation, every side comment, every innocent hallway chat, captured. I didn't even need to bait her. Trina couldn't help herself. She was the type who liked to stir the pot, then play innocent when it boiled over. So when she thought no one was listening, she let things slip. Little things at first. I don't know why they trust her so much. But then she got sloppy. One day, she was sitting in the break room with two of her buddies from sales. They didn't know I'd stepped into the hallway next to it, or that I could hear everything. I mean, yeah, I told HR she was dropping the ball, Trina said, loud enough for the mic to catch it clearly. If she's out, that opens up a spot, right? It's not like I made anything up. I just emphasized things. The other two laughed. That was it. That was the sentence I needed. But that wasn't even the worst part. Then came the breaking point. A week later, I got called into HR for a performance review. Trina had reported me, again, for creating a hostile work environment. This time she said I undermined her during meetings and made unprofessional comments about her to coworkers. The irony? I hadn't said a word about her to anyone, but she didn't know that I'd been recording. So when the HR manager slid a piece of paper across the desk and said, "We've had multiple concerns raised," I slid my own folder across the table. Inside, a USB drive, labeled clearly, with a 3-page document outlining timestamps, summaries of each clip, and direct quotes with context. Every instance of sabotage, every whispered confession, every innocent smear job caught on audio. The HR manager blinked. "Is this recent?" I smiled. Within the last 3 weeks, all recorded at my desk or in public spaces. They told me they'd follow up. I went back to my desk and waited. 2 days later, I came in to find Trina's desk half packed. She wasn't crying, but she looked close. HR escorted her out before lunch. Her little sales sidekicks avoided eye contact all day. Wow, she really thought she could build a career on sabotage and whispers, and then folded like wet cardboard the moment someone pressed play. Sometimes the best revenge isn't explosive. It's subtle. It's steady. It's collecting receipts while your enemy monologues. Oh, and I got a raise 2 weeks later. Apparently, HR was impressed with how I handled the situation professionally. I didn't correct them. I just said thank you and bought myself a better mic. Sometimes being the reasonable one in a petty situation doesn't make you weak. It makes you undeniable. But if you think corporate sabotage is bad, wait until you hear what happened when a wedding was nearly destroyed by an ex. My ex had a lot of flaws, but subtlety wasn't one of them. When we broke up, it wasn't tragic. Just one of those slow fades where everything becomes an argument, and silence starts to feel easier than conversation. I moved on, met someone incredible, fell in love for real this time, and 2 years later I was planning my wedding with the kind of joy that actually makes sense in those cheesy Pinterest boards. And then my ex RSVP'd. Yes, I shouldn't have been surprised. We still had a few overlapping friends, and technically the invite had gone out to a mutual contact list. I figured, okay, he'll show up, eat his chicken, do the polite head nod, and leave. My fiancée wasn't thrilled, but we weren't trying to start drama, so we let it slide. That was mistake number 1. Mistake number 2 was not intercepting the microphone during the reception. Halfway through dinner, just as the champagne flutes hit the tables, my ex decided he needed to make a toast. He stumbled up, clearly a few drinks in, and the moment he tapped the glass, I felt my stomach drop. The entire room quieted. "I just want to say," he slurred, "I still love you." That was literally how he started the speech. He rambled for 3 full minutes about how some things never die and how we were great once, and then he ended it with, "But hey, you look happy, so I guess that's good." Everyone clapped awkwardly. My grandmother looked horrified. My maid of honor looked like she was mentally calculating the distance to the nearest exit. We pulled him aside, told him to leave. He shrugged, made some joke about how, at least he was honest, and Ubered out with 2 groomsmen who later swore they didn't know he was going to do that. It took everything in me not to let that moment ruin the night, but I held it together, married the love of my life, took it as just another weird footnote in the story of my ex being, well, himself. But that wasn't the end. 2 years later, an envelope landed in my mailbox with fancy gold script on the front. It was a wedding invitation. His wedding, to a woman I vaguely remembered from a few years back. Let's call her Kayla. She was sweet from what I knew. Worked in HR somewhere, always had an Instagram feed full of positive quotes and brunch photos. I remember seeing her around when he and I were still dating, but I didn't think much of it back then. I almost threw the invite out. Almost. But then I remembered the speech, and then I remembered who Kayla had dated before my ex. And that's when I had a very, very petty, very delicious idea. I reached out to her ex, let's call him Nate. We hadn't talked in years, but we'd both been at a few parties back in the day, and I figured it was worth a shot. I messaged him, asked if he remembered me, and told him I had a wild idea. He replied, "Does it involve revenge and formal wear? Because I'm in so IRSVP'd yes. +1. Nate and I coordinated outfits. We were polite, charming, exactly the kind of guests you want at a wedding, until we weren't. We showed up early, sat toward the front, smiled for pictures, and waited. Then came the breaking point. Just before the ceremony, Nate pulled Kayla aside for a quick chat. She looked surprised but not suspicious. He handed her a small envelope. Inside, printouts of texts, emails, and DMs, overlapping timelines between when she and my ex started dating and when he and Nate were still together. Yes, my ex had cheated on her too, and apparently never deleted anything. Nate gave her the evidence, said he just wanted her to know before she made a commitment she couldn't take back. Then he left. 10 minutes later, one of the bridesmaids came out and whispered something to the officiant. Guests started murmuring, and within 20 minutes someone got up and said, "We're so sorry, but the ceremony won't be proceeding today." My ex? He looked like he'd been hit by a truck. He tried calling her phone. No answer. Tried to get into the bridal suite. Security blocked him. I heard he stayed in the venue's parking lot for 2 hours afterward, just sitting on the curb in his tux, waiting for her to change her mind. She didn't. The wedding was cancelled. The reception hall emptied out. And my ex? Single. Again. Publicly. Wow. The man really said, "I still love you" at my wedding, and then expected a smooth ride to his own. Honestly, poetic justice doesn't even cover it. That's karma with a seating chart. Sometimes all it takes is a well-timed +1 and a few screenshots to take someone's fantasy and turn it into a very expensive wake-up call. And here's where it gets absurd, when your own coworker tries to be your boss. I had a coworker named Dylan, and if you've ever worked in an office, you already know the type. He was the guy who acted like he was your buddy in meetings, nodding along, smiling, throwing in a great point. But the second management left the room, he'd turn into a clipboard with legs and start auditing your soul. He wasn't even subtle. If I sent an email to the client, he'd forward it to the team with slight tweaks. If I missed a deadline, even if it was his job to supply the data, he'd casually drop, "Yeah, we hit a bottleneck on that. Not sure what happened on OP's side." Classic. He didn't want to be part of the team. He wanted to manage the team. And he figured the best way to climb the ladder was by stepping on people's shoulders, mine included. At first, I tried to play it cool, kept everything in writing, reconfirmed tasks over Slack, triple-checked my assignments and clarified anything even remotely vague. I figured, if I just stay sharp, he won't have room to twist anything. I was wrong. Dylan didn't need room. He just made stuff up. He started volunteering me for the worst projects, ones with unclear scope, unrealistic deadlines, or guaranteed failure. Then, when things inevitably went sideways, he'd swoop in like a smug little vulture and say something like, "Don't worry, I'll help clean this up." Translation, I will take the credit when it works and blame you when it doesn't. But that wasn't even the worst part. One time, he forgot to attach the reference files to a critical pitch deck I had to present. I asked for them 3 times before the meeting. He said, "Oh yeah, I sent them already. Check your spam." They weren't there. He hadn't sent anything. But in the meeting, when I stumbled, he cut in smoothly and said, "Oh, I thought I sent those." No worries, I'll get them to you guys after the call. The client looked confused. I looked incompetent. Dylan looked like the hero. That was the breaking point. Then, like a gift from the heavens, or maybe just HR, our department announced they were doing a temporary leadership rotation. Basically, anyone could nominate a peer to act as team lead for 2 weeks. It was supposed to be an empathy and perspective exercise. Harmless, experimental. No permanent promotions, just exposure. I nominated Dylan. He lit up like a Christmas tree. Said something about how he'd been preparing for this kind of responsibility for a while. Immediately started drafting plans for team restructuring, whatever that meant. I smiled and said, "You've got this." And then I sat back and watched the man implode. Day one, he forgot to schedule the weekly client sync. Our biggest client just forgot. No invite sent. They waited on Zoom for 20 minutes before emailing me directly because Dylan didn't answer his phone. Day three, he announced a new folder structure on the shared drive. For clarity, he renamed everything. Deleted what he thought was a duplicate server folder. It wasn't. It was our backup archive. Years of templates, finalized presentations, and signed agreements. Gone. Day 5, one of the junior analysts broke down crying after Dylan tried to give her constructive feedback by rewriting her report and publicly criticizing her formatting in a group email. By the end of the week, the entire team was whispering. People were coming to me with questions like, "I know Dylan's lead right now, but can you just tell me how to fix this?" So I started taking notes. I created a silent audit, logged every screw-up, every missed meeting, every deleted file. I included Slack screenshots, client emails, time-stamped call logs. Not dramatic, just objective, clear, inarguable. When the 2 weeks were up, we had our debrief with the department head. Dylan came in with a PowerPoint full of corporate buzzwords. Team flow optimization, workflow pivot strategies, communication culture. He even had a slide that said, "Leadership is a mindset, not a title." I came in with facts. I laid out the audit, showed what had been missed, what had been lost, and how many hours we spent cleaning up after him. I kept it calm, professional, let the receipts do the talking. And my manager? She just nodded, took notes, and said, "Thanks for documenting all of this. We'll take it under review." 2 weeks later, Dylan was demoted. Not just taken off lead, demoted. And guess who got the official promotion? Me. Dylan now reports to me. He didn't take it well, tried to act like it was just temporary and that he'd focus on individual contributions for now. But the tone shift was immediate. Suddenly, all his suggestions came in with calendar invites and status updates. He started double-checking his own deadlines. A humbling experience, no doubt. Wow, this guy really thought he could finesse his way to the top with vibes and sabotage. And the second he had actual responsibility, he cratered. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about taking someone down. It's giving them exactly what they asked for and watching them fall on their own PowerPoint. But that wasn't even the worst part. Let's talk identity theft. I never expected a credit alert to feel personal. You know how you always see those emails and think, probably spam. Yeah, this one wasn't. It was legit. I opened it and there it was. A brand new credit card in my name, opened in a state I hadn't even lived in for 6 months. The weirdest part? The purchases weren't even extravagant. Just Target runs, gas, fast food, a gym membership in a city I hadn't set foot in since college. That's when it clicked. I knew exactly who did it. A former roommate, let's call her Bree. We'd lived together during my last year of school. She seemed harmless at first, a little flaky, the kind of girl who'd Venmo you $3.71 for her half of the water bill, and then spend $200 on candles for the vibe. But overall, I figured we'd go our separate ways after graduation, and that'd be that. Clearly, Bree had other plans. Now, the smart move would have been to report her immediately, file a fraud claim, freeze my credit, and don't worry, I did that eventually, but not before getting a little creative, because if Bree wanted to play games with my identity, I was about to become her. First, I pulled my credit reports and grabbed every address linked to the fraudulent accounts. There it was, her new apartment, 2 states away. Same name she always used, same spelling, even the same cutesy email handle she used for online shopping. Bree__Lovescoffy. You'd think if you're going to steal someone's identity, you'd at least try to separate it from your own. So I made a new email account, Bribrai themed, matched her usual passwords, because yes, she reused them and I had access to her old Amazon Prime account. Don't judge. She left it logged in on our shared TV for months. Once I had my little digital doppelganger set up, I started spending. Not recklessly, strategically. I ordered a few spa packages, a designer purse she always talked about but could never afford, and a full glam makeup haul. Everything was set to ship to her current address, all under her name. It felt like writing a passive-aggressive novel in purchase history. But that wasn't even the worst part. Then came the breaking point. I submitted a police report. Not just for the original fraud she committed against me, but with all the new transactions in her name, shipped to her address, using the same credit card companies she'd used to open fake accounts under mine. I attached screenshots of every account, the matching shipping address, her fake signature on the applications, even a copy of a text where she asked me for my old SSN digits so she could help set up our utilities faster. At the time, I thought it was lazy, but now I realized it was strategic. The police called me within 24 hours. Apparently, she had 3 open fraud cases already pending in other counties. My file just added fuel to the fire. But Bree tried to flip it. She called me blocked number, of course, and screamed that I was framing her, that I had hacked her identity, that she had no idea where those charges came from. "Why would I order stuff in my own name?" she yelled. I just said, "Exactly," and hung up. The cops didn't buy her act either. Her fingerprints were literally on the packages when they searched her apartment. She had the makeup haul unopened on her kitchen counter when they walked in. Wow. Imagine being so bad at stealing someone's identity that you accidentally incriminate yourself with Sephora samples. She ended up taking a plea deal. No jail time, but a big old felony charge on her record and a lovely little payment plan to repay the debt. I even got reimbursed, most of it at least. The best part? To this day, I still get alerts about her trying to open new accounts under slightly altered names. B Love Coffee, Brianna C. Like, girl, if you're going to forge a name, maybe don't keep the coffee bit. Sometimes revenge is just giving someone the rope and watching them tie their own knots. Sometimes roommates are the worst. Other times, they're just nosy. My roommate couldn't mind her own business if you paid her. And I tried, I really did, to give her the benefit of the doubt. We met through mutual friends, and at first she seemed fine. Friendly, clean enough, paid rent on time. But there were little signs, even in the beginning. Questions that were too specific, comments that made no sense unless she'd seen things I hadn't shared. Like the time she said, "I didn't know you used that serum too," when I'd literally just ordered it the night before and hadn't even opened the box yet. Or when she accidentally mentioned a name I'd only written down once, deep in a notebook I kept in my nightstand. That's when it clicked. She was snooping. Not just casually glancing, like digging. Reading my stuff, looking through drawers, maybe even my emails. I wasn't paranoid, I knew the signs. She had that same smirky, self-satisfied energy you only get when someone thinks they're 5 steps ahead and thinks you'll never catch on. So I decided to test her. I picked up a $4 notebook from the corner drugstore. Nothing fancy, just lined pages and a fake leather cover that screamed, "I have secrets." Then I started writing. Only this time, the secrets were strategic fiction. Page 1, I confessed to cheating on a fake boyfriend. "I feel awful about what I did to Jason," I wrote, but part of me wonders if he deserved it after the Cancun thing. Page 3, I talked about a job offer in another state. "They want me to start next month," I scribbled, "but I haven't told anyone yet. Especially not her. I don't think she'll take it well when I leave." By page 5, I started planting landmines. Things like, "She used my shampoo again today." I didn't say anything. I think she's trying to get under my skin. And I saw her looking at my mail again. I need to install cameras. The whole thing was one big trap. And I left it right where I knew she'd find it, tucked under a pillow on my bed. Not hidden, just casually suspicious. The next morning, she was quiet. Not normal quiet, pointedly quiet. No small talk, no comments about my outfits. Just this weird simmering tension, like she wanted to say something but didn't know how. Classic guilty energy. So I doubled down. I wrote an entry that said, "I think she knows I know." If she says anything, I'm going to pretend I don't understand what she's talking about. I want to see how far she'll go. Sure enough, 2 days later, she cracked. She cornered me in the kitchen and blurted out, "So, who's Jason?" And I wish I could have filmed my own face in that moment. I blinked, tilted my head, and said, "Jason?" Her voice cracked. "From your journal, the one you left out." I'm not judging, I just think it's really messed up that you're cheating on someone, and that's when I interrupted. I went full calm mode. Deadpan, slightly confused, slightly amused. "Wait, you read my journal?" She froze. Total deer in headlights moment. "Well, I mean, you left it out." I just nodded. "And you read the whole thing?" She didn't answer. So I walked over to the bookshelf, opened the hollowed out photo frame sitting on top, and pulled out a little black box. My nanny Cam. She looked like she might physically evaporate. I'd installed it the same day I started the journal project. Hidden in plain sight, just a generic little clock camera aimed directly at my bed and nightstand. I pulled up the footage on my phone and hit play. There she was, sitting on my bed, flipping through the pages like it was her job, pausing, taking pictures. I didn't yell, I didn't threaten her, I didn't have to. I just said, "So now that we both know what you did, and what you think you know, I think it's best we don't live together anymore." She didn't argue. She moved out that weekend, left behind a few things, including my shampoo, which I donated to the building's lost and found shelf out of sheer spite. Wow, imagine being so nosy you gaslight yourself into a meltdown over a fictional affair. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge isn't loud. It's subtle. It's handing someone a trap disguised as temptation, and watching them dive in headfirst. And now we pivot, from petty to pettily corporate. It started with a message that looked way too polished to be real. "Hey, I saw your profile and couldn't stop smiling." Her name was Claire. Blonde, beachy, profile full of sunlight and vague captions about chasing joy. At first, I figured it was just another bot or a bored intern running a fake account. But then she replied to my reply, with full paragraphs, thoughtful ones. She asked real questions, remembered details, even referenced things I'd said in past messages like we'd known each other longer than 2 weeks. I should have known. But when someone makes you feel seen, even digitally, it's easy to suspend disbelief. We started talking every day, morning check-ins, late-night conversations about childhood dreams and favorite books. She never video called, always had some excuse. Bad Wi-Fi, camera broken, not feeling cute today. And weirdly, that felt normal, like she was shy or just easing into it. But one night we were texting and she sent a photo of her cat. Cute tabby on a windowsill, but the background looked weirdly familiar. So I reverse image searched it. Boom. First hit, stock photo site. Same lighting, same angle, same cat. Description, relaxed tabby on sunny windowsill. Okay, not a crime, but weird. So I searched her photos next. Every single one. Stock images, random influencers, a Pinterest account under the name Maria, not Claire. My stomach dropped. I'd been catfished. Now, most people at this point either ghost, block, or maybe call the scammer out. But me, I was mad. Not because I'd fallen for it, but because I almost did. She knew what she was doing. She wasn't playing for attention. She was fishing for personal info, emails, passwords, that what was the name of your first pet level stuff. Subtle data collection, smart, creepy, targeted. So I decided to flip it. I replied to her next message like nothing was wrong. In fact, I cranked up the affection, told her I felt like we had a rare connection, that I'd never felt this safe opening up, that I wanted to talk on the phone soon, but only after I shared something really personal. She bit. We texted for another week with me slowly opening up about fake secrets. I told her I'd been scammed before, that I had trust issues, that I needed proof she was real. That's when she slipped. She sent a confession video. Not of her face, but a screen recording of her script templates. Literally. A Google Doc titled Primary Hook Texts, full of starter messages, emotional hooks, timed responses, pages of calculated manipulation, all labeled and categorized. So I said, "Thanks." That's all I needed and blocked her. But I wasn't done. See, in one of her early emotional nights, she'd accidentally screenshotted part of her desktop when she meant to send me a picture of her dinner. In the corner, a Discord server with her username. That server? A recruitment hub for low-level catfishers. Mostly people trying to run social engineering scams on lonely guys. Scripts, tactics, tools, even a pinned post titled, "How to String Them Along for 30 Days." So I made an account, lurked, collected usernames, took screenshots, and then I posted her script verbatim on 3 dating forums, including a ScamWatch subreddit and a Facebook group dedicated to exposing romance scams. It got traction fast, like viral fast. People started tagging the script, calling it the Claire method. One guy said he recognized 4 of the lines. Another said, "Holy crap, I got this exact message last week." The screenshots of her doc got reposted everywhere. Wow. She really went from anonymous puppet master to online PSA in under 48 hours. Then came the breaking point. Someone from her Discord group messaged me, trying to intimidate me. Said I was exposing things I didn't understand, and that I messed with the wrong community. So I sent them screenshots of their own chat logs, with usernames and timestamps, and the Discord admin ID at the top, radio silence. 2 days later, that server was gone, deleted, and Claire vanished. Every account scrubbed, ghosted, nuked into the void. Sometimes the best revenge isn't yelling, it's letting them hand you the script and then using it to write their downfall. Sometimes you don't need closure. You just need a public forum and a really good reverse image search. But what happens when the enemy is your own family? My little brother is the kind of kid who brings teachers apples. He's quiet, super into art, volunteers at the animal shelter on weekends, like an actual cinnamon roll in human form, which is probably why this one guy, Ryan, made him his personal target. Ryan was 2 grades older, played varsity football, and had all the makings of a teen movie villain. Loud, overconfident, the kind of guy who peaked at 17 and still somehow knew it. And for some reason, he decided my brother was his new hobby. It started with name-calling, stupid stuff. Sketch boy, dog boy. That kind of high school cruelty that's not clever, just mean. But it escalated fast. He started stealing his sketchbook, posting dumb snap stories, making fun of his drawings. He even threw a smoothie at him in the cafeteria once. I didn't find out until my brother came home with mango pineapple dripping off his backpack, and this broken look on his face like he'd already accepted this was his life now. And honestly, I saw red. Now I could have stormed down to the school, talked to teachers, raised a fuss. But this wasn't about rules. This was personal. So I started digging. First, I checked Ryan's public socials. Nothing major. Just your standard grid of gym selfies and blurry friend pics from parties. But then I searched his username through some old Reddit sleuthing tools, and that's when things got interesting. I found a parallel account. Same handle, but with a number at the end, probably an alt he thought was subtle. The profile linked to an OnlyFans, under a fake name. Same face, different vibe. We're talking full thirst traps, custom content, the works. And hey, no shame in that. Hustle is hustle. But Ryan? Ryan's whole thing at school was being this ultra-macho, borderline homophobic, hyper-religious golden boy. His family posted Bible verses like clockwork. His dad was on the church board. His mom ran a Purity in Prayer Instagram account. So let's just say, this content, not part of the family brand. But here's the thing, I didn't out him. I didn't need to. I had something better. I printed off a few screenshots, not the explicit stuff, just enough to show the link between his main identity and his OnlyFans alias. Username overlaps, timestamp receipts, facial recognition level comparisons. Then I waited until after school. He was standing by his locker, laughing with his friends, when I walked by and handed him a plain manila envelope. No words, just a look. He opened it. His face changed immediately. You ever watch someone go from smug to terrified in half a second? It was beautiful. He didn't say a word, just folded the envelope, shoved it in his bag, and walked off. And that was it. The next day, no more name-calling, no smoothie attacks, no mysterious sketch boy graffiti. My brother said Ryan barely even made eye contact after that. The bullying stopped. Permanently. Wow. This guy really thought he could run a secret life while being a public nightmare. And no one would ever connect the dots. Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It's letting someone know that you know, and watching them spiral in silence. And speaking of online secrets, it started with a note taped to my door. A smug little piece of printer paper with bold font and way too many typos. Notice of lease termination due to violations. Violations? I blinked. I'd been living there for over a year, paid rent early, never had a noise complaint. I even watered the stupid plants in the shared hallway that everyone else ignored. So I read the violations, and I kid you not, one of them was for having unauthorized curtains. Not a pet, not a noise disturbance. Curtains. I called the property manager, and his tone told me everything. He was trying to push me out. We were prioritizing tenants who can pay a little more. Markets moved up, that was code for, we want to jack up the rent and you're in the way. It was shady, it was aggressive, and it was completely illegal under my lease. But that wasn't even the worst part. I talked to another tenant down the hall, an older guy named Luis who'd lived there for over a decade. He showed me his letter, almost word for word the same. Then a girl on the second floor, same thing. They were trying to purge the building, so I got to work. Step 1, I requested a full copy of my lease and recorded the call. The manager tried to dodge. Oh, you should already have that. I didn't. He knew it. But he stalled, which meant he was nervous. That's when I pulled the deed. Public records, baby. In less than an hour, I had a PDF with every owner, date of purchase, and, my favorite part, a record of unpaid back taxes that went back 3 years. But wait, it gets better. I started combing through the building's units on rental sites. Half of them were listed under different LLC names, none of which matched the name on my lease. That's fraud. You can't sublet units under shell companies without disclosing ownership to tenants, let alone the city. Oh, and the building? Zoned as rent controlled, which meant the landlord couldn't raise rent more than a tiny % per year without filing a very specific hardship application, one he hadn't filed. So I documented everything. I built a folder so tight it could have walked into court and asked for a verdict. Lease violations, tax records, screenshots of the sublets, zoning laws, even city ordinances highlighted in yellow like I was prepping for a Netflix doc. Then came the fun part. I emailed the city, not just one department, all of them. Housing enforcement, tax collections, zoning and licensing. I CC'd every email address I could find. My subject line? Urgent, ongoing housing fraud and illegal evictions at from address. I expected it to take months. It took 6 weeks. City inspectors swarmed the place. Full audit. They walked into the office with clipboards and badges, and the manager suddenly became very interested in whether or not I wanted to stay. I played it cool. Oh, I thought I'd already been evicted. 2 days later, the city put up a big red notice on the front gate. Property condemned. Violations of city code. Do not enter. Padlocked. The landlord tried to spin it. Sent some desperate email to all tenants about a temporary renovation closure. But the damage was done. Word spread fast. The fake LLC listings disappeared. And the owner? He got hit with a massive back tax bill and several fines for unregistered rentals. Wow. Imagine trying to kick out tenants illegally and ending up kicked off your own property instead. Sometimes being underestimated is the sharpest weapon you have. Sometimes the best revenge is silent. Other times, it's spicy. It started with a $5 bill that mysteriously disappeared. Then it was a 20. At first, we all thought we were imagining it. Restaurant work is chaos on a good day, and counting tips during a slammed Friday night shift isn't exactly a science. But after a few weeks of missing cash, side eyes started flying. The servers were turning on each other, and I could feel it. This quiet tension building behind the scenes, like a pot about to boil over. That's when we started to suspect the new guy. His name was Jay. He was charming. Too charming. Slick with the guests, always chatting up the manager, but something about him rubbed me the wrong way. He never wanted to split the jar in front of anyone. Always said, let's just count it later, or I'll Venmo you your cut. And then, somehow, his math never quite lined up. Of course, we couldn't prove it. Not without hard evidence. And no one wanted to be that person, making accusations without receipts. But something in me just knew. You know that gut feeling when someone's smiling, but it doesn't reach their eyes? So I came up with a plan. We had a big glass tip jar by the host stand. It was supposed to be communal, split evenly among whoever worked that shift. But since Jay always volunteered to count it alone, that was the problem area. So one night, right before open, I swapped out the bottom of the jar. Well, sort of. I took an identical jar from the back and I glued a small magnet to the underside. Then I slid a hidden camera into a fake cleaning supply box just across from it. A little DIY surveillance setup. Nothing fancy, just enough to see hands, money, and movement. We opened as usual. Jay was his normal self, charming, chatty, a little too comfortable. Halfway through the dinner rush, I saw him drift over to the jar and swipe a handful of cash. No one else noticed. He moved fast, tucked the bills into his apron like it was nothing. After close, he offered to count tips since everyone was tired. And again, the math was off. But this time, I didn't say anything. I just went home, pulled the footage, and smiled. There it was, crystal clear video of him pocketing the bills. And thanks to the magnet, the cash subtly shifted every time he lifted the jar, making the sleight of hand obvious. It was like a magic trick gone wrong. Wow, the confidence it takes to steal tips while working in plain view of the front window. That's Olympic-level audacity. The next morning, I asked the manager if we could meet before the shift. I brought the footage on a flash drive and calmly explained what I'd set up and why. To her credit, she didn't yell. She didn't freak out. She just watched the video 3 times and said, "Yeah, that's him." Jay showed up for work that night. We were already prepped and ready when the manager pulled him into the office. He was fired before he could even clock in. He tried to play dumb at first, said it was a misunderstanding, that he was just moving the money to the back, but the footage didn't lie, and neither did the timestamps on the Venmo payments that never matched up with the jar. And here's the kicker, he'd done it before. Another server who had transferred in from a sister location recognized his name, said he pulled a similar stunt at her old job, except no one had caught him in time. So not only did we get him fired, we got him blacklisted from the entire chain. New guy showed up the next day, quiet, respectful, did the math out loud. And now, we track our tips together. Every shift, no more guessing, no more disappearing bills. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about drama. It's about receipts, literal ones. Sometimes the worst part isn't the stealing. It's how they make you feel like the crazy one for noticing. Let's cool off with some poetic justice. Straight from high school. They used to mock me behind my back. At least they thought it was behind my back. It was college, group presentations. Startup culture was just taking off, and everyone wanted to be the next big founder. Except apparently me, because according to my classmates, I was the international kid who talked funny. I spoke English fluently, but I still had an accent. I was nervous when I spoke up in class, and they knew it. Every time I mispronounced a word, I'd hear the quiet chuckles, sometimes not even quiet. One guy, Brad, of course it was Brad, once corrected my pronunciation by repeating what I'd said in a fake version of my accent, loudly, in front of the professor. Everyone laughed. I laughed too. Not because it was funny, but because when people think you're harmless, they get sloppy. They underestimate you. They show you who they really are. And I never forgot their faces. Fast forward 15 years. I'd moved halfway across the world, started my own tech consultancy, then sold it, then started another. I'd been investing quietly in mid-sized startups for years, especially ones looking to scale and restructure. That's when one of my advisors sent me a pitch deck from a software company in the US that was hemorrhaging money but still had good bones. I opened the deck, scanned the team, and there he was, Brad, CTO. Oh, and look, 2 more from that same group project, Alex and Melissa, still in their little bubble, still thinking they ran the world. I didn't even hesitate. I made a call, ran some numbers, and within a month, I was in talks to become the new majority investor. Not just silent money, but active leadership. We closed the deal 6 weeks later. They didn't recognize my name or my face. Not after 15 years, not after the weight loss, the new haircut, the tailored suits, but I remembered them. The day of the all-hands meeting, they were all seated in the front row. Brad was tapping on his phone. Melissa was whispering something about the new guy with money. Alex was probably trying to figure out if I spoke enough English to read the teleprompter. So I walked on stage, and I said in the thickest version of my original accent, Exaggerated vowels, soft R's, everything. Good morning. It's very nice to see you all again. The room froze. Melissa blinked like she'd seen a ghost. Brad stopped chewing his gum. Alex dropped his pen. And then I smiled. Switched to my natural cadence, clear, confident English. That was for you three, I said, and pointed them out by name, because I remember everything you said back then. Every joke, every fake accent, every time you made fun of someone trying, and then I let it land. Now you work for me. Wow, imagine going from mocking someone's voice to waiting for it to approve your quarterly budget. Sometimes karma doesn't knock. It shows up in a tailored blazer with a controlling stake and a memory like a steel trap. And if you're wondering what happened next, I didn't fire them. Oh no, that would have been too easy. I just made them sit through every pitch, every product meeting, and every investor call, with me as the voice of the brand. Suddenly, pronunciation wasn't so funny anymore. Almost done. But this next one, pure chaos. It was supposed to be a simple Saturday. You know, the kind where you bring your kid to the park, sip a lukewarm coffee while they climb the same slide 20 times, and for a few hours life is quiet. My daughter had just turned 6. She's wild in the best way. Tiny shoes, big opinions, and enough energy to power a medium-sized city. I was sitting on a bench watching her chase another kid around the jungle gym when this guy walks by. Early 40s, smug expression, polo shirt tucked in just a little too aggressively. He looked like the kind of guy who checks his own Yelp reviews. He paused, looked me up and down, then scoffed loud enough for it to be heard. "Must be nice," he muttered. "Some of us actually work for a living." I looked up, confused. "Excuse me?" He gestured toward my daughter. "You just sitting there while your kid runs wild?" Typical lazy dad behavior, I blinked. Was this guy serious? Before I could respond, he turned and walked off, like he'd just dropped some truth bomb I was supposed to reflect on. My daughter ran back to me moments later, laughing and completely unaware, and I forced a smile. But inside? Rage. Not because he insulted me, because he did it in front of her. She didn't understand what he said, not fully, but she saw the way my face changed. She saw me go quiet, and that's what stuck with me. So I did something I rarely do. I followed him. From a distance, sure. I didn't want to make a scene. He headed toward the parking lot, got into a silver SUV with a company decal on the side. The logo looked really familiar. And that's when it clicked. He worked for the same tech firm I'd done freelance I designed for just last quarter. So I took a picture of the car. Then I went home and pulled the security cam footage from the public park's open access system. Lucky for me, the angle was perfect. Clear shot. Audio crisp enough to catch every word of his little monologue. Now, normally, I wouldn't go nuclear over some jerk making a rude comment. But this guy clearly thought he could say whatever he wanted, to whoever he wanted, and there'd never be consequences. So I opened LinkedIn, found the company, pulled their team page, took a wild guess and matched the face. Bingo, his name was Todd. And not just any Todd. Senior level marketing. Then I found the email for their diversity, equity, and inclusion officer. Yes, companies have those. And yes, sometimes they read what you send them. I kept the message simple. Hi there. I'm a contractor who recently worked with your company. I had a disturbing encounter with one of your employees in public. He made unsolicited, sexist, and classist remarks in front of my 6-year-old daughter. I thought you'd want to see it before this footage ends up anywhere else. I attached the clip. Didn't threaten, didn't rant, just sent the facts. 3 days later, I got a response. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. The matter has been escalated to HR and executive review. We are taking this seriously, and just like that, radio silence. I figured they'd give him a slap on the wrist, maybe a warning. But about a week later, I checked LinkedIn again, and Todd's job title had mysteriously disappeared. His profile had gone from senior marketing lead to looking for new opportunities. Oh, wow. This guy really called me a lazy dad to my face while knowing nothing about me, and forgot that the world is very, very small when your job relies on reputation. Sometimes being the reasonable person in an unreasonable situation makes you look like the bad guy. Other times, it makes you look like someone they really shouldn't have messed with. And our final tale, a roommate reckoning, long overdue. It was like a horror movie, but for landlords. Well, almost landlords. I wasn't even the actual leaseholder. We were both on it, co-signers, equally responsible. Equal names on the dotted line. Which is what made it even worse when my ex-roommate dipped out mid-lease like we were in some kind of sitcom season finale. No warning. Just a note on the counter, her key, and a mess. Trash bags piled by the front door. A mysterious brown stain on the carpet that I still don't want to talk about. Unpaid utility bills. An emotional support ferret I did not know she had, who left claw marks on the windowsill and something much worse in the air vents. And the cherry on top? She blocked me. On everything. Text, blocked. Venmo, blocked. Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, even LinkedIn. Who blocks someone on LinkedIn? At first I was just shocked. Then I got the bill for repairs. Almost $1,800 in damages. The landlord was lenient enough to let me pay in installments, probably because I was the only one still physically there. But it still stung. Hard. I spent a week debating what to do. Part of me wanted to just eat the cost and move on. Lesson learned. But then I remembered something. She loved Reddit. She was one of those chronically online people who posted aesthetic photos of her minimalist setups and acted like she lived in a Pinterest board. She even bragged about getting apartment recommendations from r/aesthetic living and r/budget room goals. So I posted something, not under my real name. I used a burner, of course, but I made sure it sounded casual enough to slide into her usual feeds. Title was something like, "Roommate moved out mid-lease and left this for me. Aesthetic enough for y'all?" And then came the gallery. 12 high-resolution photos, each one worse than the last. Moldy dishes, a burned-out hair straightener still plugged in, carpet stains that looked like someone murdered a pumpkin, her ferret's goodbye gifts, the whole apocalyptic apartment tour. But that wasn't even the worst part. The caption was where I got specific. I listed every dollar she owed me, by item. Broken mirror, $70. Unpaid internet bill, $94. Carpet cleaning, $300. Pet deposit she never paid, $500. I even included screenshots of the rent receipts and the part of our lease that said both tenants were financially responsible, just in case anyone tried to argue. And people did not argue. The post exploded. Dozens of comments asking for updates. People calling her out by name once they realized who it was. Someone even found an old post she'd made about our apartment, flexing the natural light and cozy vibes, using the exact same couch that was now soaked in what I hoped was iced coffee. And then, her new landlord found it. No joke. I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. A woman introduced herself as the manager of the building my ex had just moved into. Apparently, she hadn't signed the lease yet. She was waiting on a background check, but her potential landlord had stumbled on the Reddit thread while doing a little extra research. "I assume this is about one name redacted," she said, "because if so, she's no longer welcome here." Then, wait for it, she put my ex on the phone, sobbing, like full-on reality TV sobbing. Said she didn't know I'd go nuclear, that it was just a mistake, that she'd been under a lot of pressure and couldn't deal with confrontation. I let her cry for a bit. Then I calmly said, "Pay what you owe me." "I'll take the post down," she paid. Every cent, within 48 hours, through her mom's Venmo, because apparently the block hadn't extended to family. And yes, I did take the post down, but not before taking screenshots of everything, just in case she ever pulled something like that again. Sometimes people only take responsibility when the internet shines a little light on their mess. Sometimes being the reasonable one makes you look cold. But honestly, there's a difference between revenge and receipts. We've seen chaos, revenge, and poetic justice tonight. Now let the calm take over. If you've made it all the way here, you're as hooked as I am. Sweet dreams, everyone. And remember, sometimes karma takes a while, but it always arrives.